All right, so today we're going to be expanding our knowledge from 5th grade on coordinate planes, and we're working into all 4 quadrants because last year we only saw one with all positive numbers. We're going to be working on locating and naming points on a coordinate plane. The first thing you need to know about a coordinate plane is you have to have an ordered pair. If you don't have this, then it will be considered incorrect and you have no directions or way to get there. So think of it like this. It always has to have those parentheses around the 2 values and a comma separating them. This is the rule for how it has to look every single time. The first value is your x coordinate. And the second number is going to represent your y coordinate. This is how far you move on the x or y axis. One way to help you remember which one goes first is alphabetical order. So go ahead and put a box around that one. Let's go ahead and look at the steps. You are going to start at the origin, which is where the y and the x-axis meet. That's where they intersect. We write this coordinate in an ordered pair as 0, 0. Next, once we're at the origin, we're either going to move left or right on the x-axis, so using the x coordinate. And then once we get to the x value, we're going to move up or down based on the y coordinate. One way to remember this is you always have to run before you jump. So running represents anything on the x-axis. So you're going left and right. Anything to the left is negative. Anything to the right is positive. And then when you have jumping, you're doing the y-axis. When you move up, it is positive, and down is negative. So let's go ahead and look at the coordinate plane. Right here we have our origin right in the middle. So let me show that to you with my little laser. Our origin is right here in the middle where those 2 cross. That is our origin, and that's where we're going to start every single time. This year I want you to know that we have different quadrants. So when I think of a quadrant, I think of 4 because of quarters, quadrant, quarters. So there are 4 quadrants, just like there are 4 quarters in a football game. So in the first quadrant, you will always have positive x and y values. So if you look at those examples of ordered pairs underneath, those are all positive x and y values. In quadrant 2, you will have 1 negative with your x and 1 positive with your y. That is because all of this, when I go to the left, is going to be negative, and all of my values are negative for the x. In quadrant 3, both of them are going to be negative because the x and the y value are both negative values. And then in our last quadrant, we have positive x because we're on the positive side of the x, and then we'd be going down on the negative y. Whenever I think to remember this, I always think of the letter C to remember the order for the quadrants, and it's always represented in Roman numerals. So let's go ahead and graph points. I'm going to show you in detail how to graph 2 from each quadrant. So looking at it, we know that we are going to start at our origin. We always, always, always have to start at the origin because that is where we're starting from every time to make sure that they're correct. So we're going to start at the origin. I'm going to mark it in red. I'm going to move on the x value first, which is my first number, 8. Then I'm going to go up 4 because my y value is a positive number. So I'm going to go to positive 4 on the y. This is where I'm going to plot my point. So my first point, you're going to put right at the intersection. Put right at the intersection and label it A. The reason we're labeling it A is because that is the name of the coordinate. So we have the coordinate here, and we have the letter that it goes with. We're going to go ahead and do B the same way. So we're going to 5, 5. So I'm starting at my origin, and we're going to go on the x-axis 5, positive. And then from there, we're going to jump up to 5, positive as well on the y-axis. This is where I'm going to plot my point right there at the intersection, and we are going to name this B. Now our next two, I would go 4, start at the origin, go to positive 4 and up 8. So I have point C. And then for point D, I would go to 7 on the X, starting at my origin, and up 2. So I'd put my point and label it D. Let's go ahead and look into this second quadrant. We are going to plot E first. So again, we're starting at the origin, and our first number on our X value is -9. So I have to go all the way to -9. And then I'm going to look at my Y value, and that tells me to go up 6. So that is where I'm going to plot my point and label it the same name that it had, which is E. Now for F, we're going to start at our origin again. We're going to go to -3 on the X, and then up 5. So positive 5. And plot our point right at those crosshairs, giving us point F. Same with G and H, -5, 1, I'd go to -5 and up 1. For H, I would go to -7 and up 7. Looking at quadrant 3, both of ours are going to be negative. So we have -10, 10. So I would start at my origin, and I'm going to start with my X value, which is -10, and I'm going to go to -10. And then my Y value says -10, so I'm going to jump it down to -10 and plot my point right there. Make sure you label it. So this one is I. J is at -5, -3. So I would go to -5 and down to -3, plot my point and label it J. K is at -4, -1, so I'd go to -4 from the origin on my X and down to -1 on my Y. Plot my point and label it. And then we have L, which is at -7, -6, so go to -7 on my X and then down to -6 on my Y. Plot my point and write my letter. In my very last quadrant, my X is going to be positive and my Y is going to be negative, so we're going to plot point M really quickly. So we're going to start at our origin, and we're going to go to +5 on the X. Once we get there, we're going to go ahead and jump down to -4 on my Y and plot that point really fast. Make sure that you label it as well, and that would be point M. N is at 4, -2, so we'd go to +4 on the X and -2 on the Y. Put your point and put your number. O is at +3 and -7, and then P is at 5 and -7. So you're following the same rules every time. Run before you jump and paying attention to what your values are and where you would go. You always, always, always start at the origin.